everyone. Today we have Navya Singh. She is a climate action journalist and founder of News with Navya. With experience across prominent platforms like The Logical Indian and The Quint, her work has been featured by the BBC and included in the Climate Creators to Watch 2024 list. She's revolutionizing the way we think about sustainability and is on a mission to make climate action mainstream. So, we welcome you, Navya. In your opinion, what's the most critical climate issue right now that requires immediate attention?
I think the most problematic issue right now is the fact that people think individual efforts don't matter. A lot of times when we talk about climate change, people say, "ठीक है, मतलब what happens if we don't do it? There are so many other people doing
Yeah,
it. There are
yeah,
communities doing it. Government is doing it. Why should we do it?" But that's
yeah.
not how it should be. Even when I started talking about climate action, even in the beginning of my journey, I myself never understood the power of individual actions. But then there is a lot of power in what you decide for your future and how you decide to create the environment around you, all of those things, right? So today, if I want to change something around me, say for example, if I want to talk about water shortage around me, or why is there so much water wastage in the area where I live, that conversation, just the conversation, if it's started by me, so many other people can become a part of that. Some people can suggest solutions. Some people might already be doing something
Yeah.
sustainable in their own individual capacity. The idea is to, the biggest problem and the biggest solution lie in the same thing. It's individual action. So people think individual action does not really help, but it plays a very important role. And that is exactly what leads to collective action and then to
Correct.
a collective goal, right? So
Yeah.
it's important whenever I have a conversation with anyone in climate action, I try to encourage people to ensure that you do what you can do in your
Yeah.
capacity. Others
True.
will follow, but first you need to start. It's always easier to point fingers and say, the government is not doing that. First you need to get your priorities right, and these start with really small things, right, from your individual actions to something as big as voting. So if in your individual capacity you think environment is really important for you, or your sustainable future is something that really, is a point of concern for you, then you will vote on the basis of those things. Then, environmental actions become electoral priorities. And that's exactly what we need. I mean, we need to elect people who promise us a greener future, a better future, instead of just fighting amongst themselves. So that's how I feel it should be.
I feel it also depends on how you put guidance to your children. And just like how charity begins at home, all of these
Absolutely.
lessons that we are providing to your children, the parenting lessons, it has to also be should be a part of it, right?
These things are things that you learn very early in your life. Things as
Yeah.
simple as, or as basic as, not disrespecting your parents, not
Yeah.
doing anything that causes harm to people around you or to the
Yeah.
society. Even when, it's so surprising, we talk about backward communities and villages and all of that, but people who
Yeah.
live in villages or in smaller cities or tier 2 cities, they are way more mindful than
Yeah.
people living in big cities. Because of the rush, because of how fast paced things are in big cities, people don't really have the time to understand their responsibility. A lot of people think there are larger issues to deal with and
Yeah.
not waste, not climate. And that attitude really needs to change. It's not like climate change or waste is only going to affect you or me, it's going to affect
Yeah.
everyone. So it's high time everybody takes accountability for their actions.
Yeah. True that. And also, Navya, what drove you to become a climate action advocate? Like, how did you get into this field? How did you decide?
I wanted to be a journalist for sure.
That I
uh,
was aware.
After college,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a journalist, and because of all the internships and experiences that I had during college, I wanted to enter journalism. But then
Okay.
I worked with leading media houses. I worked with them for quite some time, and then I realized that I'm not able to create an impact.
Hmm.
And if you're not creating an impact as a journalist, your entire purpose, fails. So you
Yeah.
really want to change something, and for good, definitely. So I decided to start my own organization.
Yeah.
So I decided to start my own. And when I started News with Navya, I was talking about everything. I was talking about
Yeah.
women's safety, defense, finance, so many other things. But then we had to narrow down to one thing. So I did this really interesting, very basic series on sustainable living where I talked about what I do in my
Hmm.
own life, right? So that came out during COVID. And a
Yeah.
lot of people resonated with that. And they said, this is nice because for the first time, someone is telling us what to do. So that series brought out a lot of solutions in terms of sustainable fashion, eating, a lot of these things. So that's when I understood there is an audience for this. But the gap is that there's not much content on this. So that's when I realized that let's change the narrative. Let's talk about hope. Let's talk about what is it that people can do, because it's high time you tell people what they can do. I started talking about climate action. And
Hmm.
ever since then, I'm learning, I'm interacting with more and more people like you who take out time to have conversations on this. And I think that's what makes it a better world.
Yeah, true, right? Can you tell me three most notable climate action projects worldwide?
The three most significant projects or milestones, if I can say, are mostly in the space of innovation. In three main places, if I say, one is renewable energy, one is plastic. People are really creating amazing things out of plastic. People are also coming up with innovations to reduce plastic. There are
Okay.
bacteria that can feed on plastic and decompose it, something that we never thought of a few years ago.
Even
There are
I'm hearing this for the first time, actually.
I mean, scientists have been researching on this for so long, and there are crazy innovations in this space. So I think more than projects or more than events that are happening or platforms that are being created, I am more inspired when I see solutions take place. When I
Correct.
see people really showing me that, this is the power of technology and this is what we've achieved out of it, and that's just so inspiring.
Now that I got an idea what drove you to get into this field, right? Can you tell me the distinctive approach that you take in climate storytelling?
So the idea of climate storytelling at News with Navya is A, to make it relatable.
Hmm.
So, say for example, if you're someone who's aware about climate change and there's something that deserves your attention from this space, there are chances you can be interested in renewable energy, but there are chances you may not be interested in other things that I talk about. So, the idea is to make it relatable for the audience, to tell them that, hey, climate change is not an additional thing, it's just
Yeah,
a part of your daily life. So, the
yeah.
idea with News with Nabel storytelling is A, to break it down to basics.
Hmm.
We assume that our audience is a sixth grader and we have to
Yeah.
explain everything to them, because
Hmm.
in this fast paced life there are chances people don't have time to stay updated. So
Yeah,
you have to break down the basics to them. You have to make sure your stories are relatable, so that someone sitting in Nagpur also cares about what's happening in Goa, someone sitting in Nainital cares about what's happening in Delhi. All of
yeah.
these things, right? Because the solutions need to be relatable for every place. Then I think hope is one thing that I really feel strongly about. The idea is to bring out hope. Even if I want to talk to you about floods in a particular state, I want to end the video or my report with solutions or hope that tell
Yeah.
you that it's not all doom and gloom and here's what you can do about it.
Hmm.
Right? So I think empowering the audience with the right information and solutions is what we look at.
And what are these five factors that influence your decision making while selecting news stories?
So I think again, the first has to be that it has to be relevant for the audience. A lot of times we really have to convince people to take our videos
Huh.
seriously because they feel it's not something important for them to know. But
Yeah,
it all boils down to the way you approach the audience, right? So you have to make it interesting, you have to make it fun for people to know. Other things I think include the language in which we communicate.
Hmm.
I feel in the space of climate action, you can't speak the language of the elite and you can't speak the language that confuses people. It
Correct.
has to
Yeah.
be simple, it has to be relatable, it has to be something that it's how parents discuss politics na, at night at the dinner tables. That's how easy it should be for people to talk about climate. That
Yeah.
they're eating and they're chatting about, hey, did you know about this innovation? Did you know that this is what happens with plastic waste? All of those things, just to simplify it to that level.
Hmm.
And other factors that I think play a crucial role in storytelling are understanding the audience. I think
Hmm.
that's really important. We need to understand a lot of times the kind of stories organizations talk about
Yeah.
are not the kind of concerns people have. There can be brilliant innovations in the space of plastic, for example. But if people at that point of time are struggling with a heat wave, talk about a heat wave. Tell them what are the solutions or the ways to tackle a heat wave,
Yeah.
right? So the idea is to make sure people have solutions in that very moment. Whenever we have, whenever the monsoons start, we know there will be reports of floods coming in. We know there'll be reports of landslides coming in. It's important to educate people about why there are landslides happening in Nainital instead of just flooding Instagram or, social media with visuals of landslides. I don't
Yeah.
understand, does that help? Just showing visuals of landslides. It's so scary, it's so disheartening to see that.
I know,
Instead,
right?
reason why it's happening. So to sum it up, the stories have to be relatable, the language has to be relatable, and it has to end with a solution or a hope.
Got it. Yeah, I really like that solution part because
Yeah.
when I watch a story, I'm just, absorbing information on like this happened, that happened, they happened. But iske
Yeah,
baad what? Like,
exactly, exactly.
why is it happening and why to avoid this? Nobody talks about that, right? I had an amazing time talking to you, Navya, and we have come to the most fun part of the interview, that is rapid fire round. So let's begin. Biggest climate change myth?
Biggest climate change myth is,
Yeah.
as I said in the beginning, individual actions don't matter.
Most effective climate solution?
Hope.
One word to describe your ego personality?
Optimistic.
Okay. Impactful climate action for individuals?
Impactful climate action for individuals is mindfulness.
Favorite meme on climate change?
There's no one meme, but I think it's just how people are changing the way they are talking about climate to make it interesting. Instead of telling someone don't eat chicken, they are making comedy content around chicken, and that's somehow delivering a strong message, convincing people to give up on meat. And I think that's brilliant.
So, if you could go back in time, what would you do indifferently in your climate action journey?
I think start incorporating a lot of things that I talk about in my own lifestyle. I think that to me has really, that is a thought that's been a thought in my mind where I think a lot of things that I talk to people about, I haven't really been able to incorporate in my life. And I'm still trying to do that. But I think if I had started off that way, if I had started off my stories in that way from my own personal experience and how I practice sustainability at home, I think that would have created a much bigger impact.
Okay, then, Navya, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and I wish
Thank
you
you
all
so
the
much.
best.
Thank you so much. It was
Bye.
lovely talking to you.
Yeah.
Bye.